The stars over Mirak 12 shimmered with their usual serenity, until they didn't. The tranquility shattered in an instant when a sensor anomaly pinged on the outer defense grid of the Zorkon Dominion. One moment, space was empty. The next, something appeared. No warp signature, no FTL distortion, just silence, then mass. Something massive. High Commander Zelvar stood motionless in the command dome, twin ocular stalks fixed on the projection above the war table. His advisors whispered calculations and probabilities, trying to frame the impossible. There were no known signatures, no registry codes, no heat trails, just one overwhelming truth rising from the data streams. The vessel had a mass ratio consistent with a Dreadnought-class warship, possibly larger, and it wasn't cloaked. It wasn't stealth. It just wasn't there until it was. And then the image resolved. Grainy at first, then horrifyingly clear. Matte black hull. Angular, brutalist design. A long spinal cannon flanked by kinetic railgun pods. The surface shimmered like obsidian under dying starlight, covered in white heat streaks and burn scars. It didn't resemble anything from the Empire's catalog, or from any known galactic faction. "Identify that ship," Zelvar barked, his voice cold with tightly leashed dread. One of his aides, a young tactician from the outer cluster, squinted. At the side of the unknown warship zoomed the display and hesitated before speaking. "There's a marking. Letters. Roman alphabet." The room fell silent. Roman? That meant Earth-based. That meant human, Zelvar hissed, like the word itself was toxic. Gasps echoed across the command dome. Another advisor stepped forward. "But they're primitives, just recently achieved interstellar travel. They don't have dreadnoughts. Their fleet was cataloged during the Cygnus Monitoring Initiative. Their largest ship barely compared to a colonial cruiser." "They've been hiding something," Zelvar said, staring at the slow, deliberate drift of the vessel as it advanced through the void like a predator entering the shallow end of a nursery. "Or they've leaped ahead. With help." Before they could debate further, a pulse signal echoed across the sector, a deliberate data burst, tight-beamed in ancient binary, addressed to the entire Mirak defense perimeter. It was short, brutal. Translated into Imperial Standard, it simply read, "This is the UHS Revenant. You've violated Sol Treaty parameters. Withdraw or be erased." The Zorkon's massive battle array bristled in response. Fighters scrambled, rail platforms realigned. Orbital torpedoes primed their trajectories. But there was a pause. A deep collective hesitation that ran through every officer, every strategist, every AI node. Because Revenant wasn't just a name. It was a legend. A ghost story told in fringe outposts and pirate enclaves. Whispers of a ship so advanced, so impossibly over-engineered, that even the Shalvareth technocracy offered bounties just to scan its hull. It was supposed to be myth, a deterrent, an experimental failure, but now it was real, and it was here. Zelvar clenched his talons into the war table, voice low and sharp. "Send a response. Tell them this is Zorkon space. We do not recognize their primitive treaties." His aide hesitated. "Sir, what if they fire first?" "They won't," Zelvar smirked. "Humans never fire first." Less than 6 seconds later, a blinding streak of white light tore through the void, splitting an orbital shipyard in two. 2,000 Dominion workers incinerated before the defense system could even issue a counter-command. The Revenant had fired, and suddenly, the entire Zorkon Dominion felt the chill of something they hadn't experienced in centuries. Fear. Before we jump into this epic tale, subscribe to HFY Chronicles for the most intense sci-fi battles, legendary warriors, and universe-shaking wars. Don't miss out. Hit that subscribe button and join the fight. The UHS Revenant didn't drift. It loomed. It moved through the theater of war like a phantom born of steel and vengeance. Every movement calculated, every vector chosen with absolute, surgical precision. It didn't evade. It didn't dodge. It dared the Zorkon to strike. And they did. Hundreds of pulse torpedoes screamed from orbiting silos, racing toward the intruder with trails of violet ion exhaust. Each warhead tipped, with gravitational disruptors, weapons capable of folding the hulls of capital ships like paper. They struck with synchronized fury and fizzled. The torpedoes didn't explode, they simply disintegrated on contact with the Revenant's outer shell. Not deflected, not vaporized, erased, no impact signature, no energy dispersion. As if reality itself refused to acknowledge the collision. Inside the Zorkon command dome, silence reigned. Zelvar's second-in-command, Archon Telvex, stared at the sensor readings with a dawning horror. "Sir, those torpedoes didn't fail. They never existed after contact. It's some kind of reactive dimensional field, beyond null shielding. Beyond anything we've ever seen." Zelvar refused to look away from the war table. His instinct screamed that the ship, no, the entity, hovering on their doorstep was far more than just human engineering. It was intent, a declaration, a message forged in titanium and quantum fire. Back aboard the Revenant, Commander Elias Kale stood before a reinforced plasma viewport, arms clasped behind his back, staring into the artificial dusk of Zorkon's orbital defense ring. His uniform, unlike the standard human fleet garb, bore the emblem of a black sun, classified insignia reserved only for operatives of Project Revenant. His face was calm, but his mind operated with battlefield efficiency. His voice cut through the command deck. "Status?" Lieutenant Mira Voss, seated at the helm, responded without hesitation. "Mirek 12 orbital net is going fully active. We have 6 capital-class warships vectoring to intercept. Multiple point defense clusters tracking. Energy shields raised across the planetary grid." Kale's eyes narrowed. "They still think this is a standoff." He tapped a command node on the console before him, activating an internal AI construct, designated ORCHA, short for Operational Reactive Combat Heuristic Algorithm. The avatar appeared in a fractal burst of blue and silver, its voice smooth, calm, and dispassionately efficient. "Ready for escalation parameters, Commander." Kale didn't hesitate. "Protocol Apex Red, no quarter. Minimize biological casualties if possible, but break their will." "Confirmed," the AI replied. "Target prioritization set. Initiating full spectral offensive." Within seconds, the Revenant's hull began to shift, literally morph. Panels slid and receded like moving plates of magma-chilled obsidian. Dozens of weapon ports emerged, revealing systems that no current galactic codex could identify. One array in particular, a rotating prism of charged antimatter lenses, whined to life, storing energy at the atomic threshold. From a distance, it looked like the ship was glowing, not from external lighting, but from within, as if something vast and barely contained stirred beneath its skin. The first Zorkon warship, a Drek-class cruiser, closed the distance and fired a barrage of gravity shears meant to tear through hulls like molecular blades. But before the pulses could reach the Revenant, they bent, curved, and collapsed in on themselves, consumed by localized space-time distortion fields generated by the ship's vector cannons. The counterstrike came not as a barrage, but a note, a frequency. The Revenant emitted a single pulse in the gamma range, too refined for most sensors to detect, yet devastating in its precision. The Drek class didn't explode. It folded. Like a crumpled page in the hands of an unseen god, its structure imploded on itself, collapsing into a twisted sculpture of fused alloy and shattered crew compartments. The remaining warships faltered. A full fleet, trained and hardened by centuries of imperial warfare, hesitated. On the command bridge of the lead Zorkon battleship, Captain Yarek Valen, a veteran of 49 campaigns, stared at the tactical feed. "This can't be human," he whispered, voice trembling. "No species escalates this fast. No civilization leaps forward like this in a single generation." But that was the truth they all feared. This was human. This was Earth's answer to a century of humiliation, of exploitation, of mockery by the Galactic Order. The humans weren't just back, they were angry, and they'd built a ship that wasn't just a weapon. It was a warning. Panic doesn't spread in waves. It detonates. Across the Zorkon orbital network, chaos erupted as comms channels flooded with crossfire commands, conflicting retreat vectors, and desperate attempts to regroup. What had begun as a confident intercept was now unraveling into a system-wide scramble for survival. The Revenant hadn't merely dismantled one warship, it had unwritten it. And the implications of that act echoed like a scream through the minds of every military strategist watching. In the vast operations nexus of the High Command, buried beneath the core vaults of the Imperial Citadel on Zorkon Prime, Chancellor, Valex was summoned from cryonic stasis, a measure reserved for only the gravest existential threats. The chamber hissed as his casket unlocked, releasing clouds of freezing mist and exposing the sharp, silver-skinned figure within. His 4 eyes flickered open, already interfacing with the situation via direct neural uplink. As he absorbed the data, his pulse accelerated, not from fear, but from something far more dangerous: disbelief. "This isn't a human warship," he rasped. "It's a message, one we were never meant to read." High Strategos Iril tried to steady her voice. "It bypassed our sensor net using active probability shifting, my lord. We can't predict its path because it's not following linear progression. It exists in multiple probabilistic states, and chooses the one we can't counter." Valex leaned forward, the frost still evaporating from his armor. "Project Revenant. We thought it was vaporware, black-budget disinfo. But this is a ghost given form." Back in orbit, the Revenant continued its slow descent into the gravity well of Zorkon Prime. It wasn't descending for a strike, it was broadcasting. An ancient human signal, encrypted in layers of forgotten protocols and dead languages, pulsed outward in all directions. Hidden deep within that signal was a code, the same one the Galactic Assembly had dismissed over a century ago as primitive and non-threatening. A simple phrase, repeated again and again, translated now by terrified analysts on a dozen alien worlds. "We remember, imagine, if your entire empire rested on the assumption that one species would never catch up, that they were destined to remain fractured, underdeveloped, manageable. And then imagine that assumption being shattered, not by a fleet, not by an army, but by one ship. A ship so advanced that even the concept of retaliation became meaningless. In the Revenant's command core, the lights dimmed to crimson. AI, Construct Orcha, was now operating under independent war zone autonomy, a level of control reserved only for post-event singularity engagements. The ship was thinking for itself, not replacing the crew but outpacing their input. Commander Kale walked the length of the observation chamber, staring out as Zorkon's sun dipped behind the curvature of the planet, casting shadows across the hemisphere below. "They're hesitating," Lieutenant Voss noted, her voice barely above a whisper. "We've already won, and we haven't even opened fire on the surface." Kale's jaw clenched. "Not yet, but we're not here for conquest. We're here to remind them." The AI chimed in, voice colder now, stripped of simulated humanity. Multiple subspace channels activating. Alliance factions demanding explanations. False flag accusations incoming. "Do you wish to respond?" Kale shook his head. "No. Let them stew in the silence." He turned to the encrypted transmission queue and initiated a secure uplink. One pointed directly at Earth's strategic defense grid, buried under the ice mantle of Antarctica. The signal jumped through 14 quantum relays, vanishing from conventional space and emerging in the Sol system. And there, back on Earth, in a secure command room deep beneath the old United Nations complex, someone picked up the call. Kale's voice was steady. "Phase 1 complete. They've seen it. They're afraid." The voice on the other end was older, lined with the burden of leadership. "Good. That fear will keep them from retaliating. But the question is, what happens when fear turns into desperation?" Kale didn't respond immediately. He turned back toward the stars, where dozens of Zorkon warships now hovered in a tense, paralyzed standoff. "They'll want answers. We'll give them history." Suddenly, the Revenant's long-range sensors pinged. Something new was entering the system. Not Zorkon, not any known faction. A ship of unknown design, larger than any capital vessel previously documented, was emerging from the edge of the system. The bridge fell silent. Even Orcha halted mid-task. Kale's heart slowed as the tactical hologram resolved the incoming vessel. It didn't match anything in the known galactic catalog. It wasn't broadcasting any recognizable signature, and yet it responded to the Revenant's ancient message with a single chilling phrase. "We remember too." The atmosphere on the Revenant's bridge shifted instantly. the mood thick with an electric tension that seemed to bend the very air. Kyle felt the hairs on his neck prickle as the unknown ship's message resonated through every channel, vibrating in his chest like a deep, ominous drum. The words, "We remember too," echoed in his mind, triggering an unsettling feeling deep within him. It wasn't just a response. It was an invitation, a challenge. Lieutenant Voss stepped forward, her voice barely a whisper. "Commander, we're not alone anymore." Indeed, the holographic display flickered, and a new icon appeared, growing larger and more defined in real time. A colossal warship, its edges illuminated by strange pulses of energy. Unlike anything Kale had ever seen, its shape was more organic than mechanical, with flowing curves and interlocking segments that almost seemed to breathe. The vessel's hull shimmered with an iridescence that reflected the faint light of distant stars, giving it the appearance of a living creature rather than an artificial construct. "Scans show no identifiable composition," Voss continued, her voice edged with awe. "It's as if the material itself is shifting, adapting in real time. It's not following any of the known principles of engineering." Kale's gaze remained fixed on the display. His mind raced with possibilities, but one truth stood clear above the rest. This ship was beyond anything the Zorkon or humanity could have produced. It was older than any records, yet somehow new, and it had responded, not just to the Revenant's broadcast, but to the challenge the galaxy had made of Earth and its forgotten people. The voice of Orcha, the Revenant's AI, sliced through the tension. "Incoming data stream. Translation. The ship is demanding we cease broadcast. It requests peaceful contact." Kale's eyes narrowed. "Peaceful contact?" "Correction," Orca continued, its tone colder now, more analytical. "It demands the return of an object, a relic from a long-dormant conflict. The object is located on a Zorkon orbital base." A relic. Kale's mind snapped back to ancient human history. There had been whispers of a lost artifact, an object tied to the earliest days of human exploration, something capable of altering the balance of power across entire systems. Had the humans of Earth once built something so powerful, so dangerous, that it had been hidden away by the Galactic Council in the hopes of suppressing its potential? If so, it seemed someone, or something, had come to claim it. Voss shook her head in disbelief. "This is insane. Who are they? What do they want with the artifact?" "We don't know yet," Kyle said, his voice hardening with resolve. "But whatever they want, we're not backing down. This is our galaxy now." He turned back to Orcha. "Full weapons systems online. Prepare for any response, but no first strike. Not yet." As the orders filtered through, Kale's thoughts drifted to Earth, his home planet, a world long abandoned by its own people, left to heal after humanity's exile. It was a bitter truth that Earth's influence on the galaxy had faded into myth, until now. Only a few remembered the deep space exoduses that had launched human colonies across the stars. Only a handful still understood the implications of the secrets Earth had left behind. Secrets like this artifact. A sudden shudder rattled the Revenant's frame, snapping Kale from his reverie. The unknown ship was moving, and at an alarming speed. It didn't just enter the system. It folded space around itself, vanishing from one point and reappearing in another, drawing closer to Zorkon Prime. "Visuals coming online," Voss muttered, fingers tapping rapidly at her console. The main viewport flickered and then filled with the silhouette of the unknown vessel, now only minutes away from the Zorkon orbital station. At that moment, Kyle felt it. A primal, gut-deep unease. The Revenant had been the dominant force for centuries, feared by all who dared to oppose Earth's rebirth. Yet now, in the shadow of this new ship, the Revenant seemed small, even fragile. It wasn't just the ship itself that unnerved him. It was the feeling of knowing that this vessel had existed long before humanity had ever been driven to the stars, and now it was here, in his face, with demands that only someone with far more power than Kale's crew could fulfill. "We've underestimated them," Kyle muttered, rubbing his temples as the alien vessel's transmission came through again. The same message, the same challenge. "We remember too." But this time, the tone was different. There was something more personal in the delivery. It was as if the vessel itself was reaching out, not just in aggression, but in recognition. in a language older than any human or galactic civilization could fathom. It spoke directly to the Revenant's core. And then, in the dark silence that followed, the implication became clear. These ancient beings were no longer content with watching from the shadows. They had come to claim their place in the galaxy. And, to make sure, humanity remembered its place too. Kale's hand hovered over the tactical console, contemplating his next move. Was it time to launch the assault? To strike first in a battle for the stars? Or was the galaxy at a precipice so deep that even the Revenant's fearsome might would be unable to prevent its fall? "Commander?" Voss's voice broke through. The stillness, a crack in the tension. She was staring at the readings with wide eyes. "They're not attacking. They're waiting." "Waiting for what?" Kale asked, unable to tear his gaze away from the looming ship. "The artifact," she replied. "They're waiting for us to hand it over. If we don't, they'll destroy us. But they're giving us a choice." And then, like a storm cloud, on the horizon, a new voice rang out over the comms, deeper and darker than anything Kale had ever heard. "We will not wait forever, human." The silence that followed the chilling ultimatum was suffocating, thick with the weight of unspoken possibilities. Kyle's fingers curled into tight fists as he stood before the viewport, his gaze locked on the colossal warship that hung in space like an ancient predator, waiting to strike. The transmission had ended, but its message lingered in the air, heavy with the undeniable truth that the stakes were now higher than anything the Revenant or its crew had ever imagined. It wasn't just the fate of one ship at risk. It was the fate of an entire galaxy, caught between the long-forgotten past and the uncertain future. Kyle's mind churned as he weighed the options. There was no denying the fear that had settled deep within him. The Revenant's weapon systems were formidable, yes, but this ship, this being, was something else entirely. The alien vessel had no form that Kale could recognize, no predictable movement or predictable behavior. It was beyond even the most advanced artificial intelligence, an enigma in every sense of the word. "Commander, we have a situation." Voss's voice cut through his thoughts, urgency in her tone. She gestured at the tactical screen, where the readings now showed a strange anomaly. A flickering energy pulse, moving in a way that suggested the unknown ship wasn't just positioned in the system. It was influencing it. The fabric of space itself seemed to warp around the alien vessel, creating gravity wells that bent light and shattered radio signals. It was like they were in the presence of an entirely new force of nature. The artifact. It had to be. Whatever. It was whatever it had once been. It was tied to this power, and now it had drawn the attention of a civilization so advanced, so old, that even the Revenant's crew could not begin to comprehend its significance. The message, the challenge, it was clear. Give us the artifact, or face extinction. Kale swallowed hard, his heart pounding in his chest. He turned toward his officers, each of them waiting for him to make the call. The weight of leadership pressed heavily on his shoulders. But this decision was not just about tactics or strategy. It was about humanity's very existence. What did he owe the countless lives that depended on him? Was the legacy of Earth, its people, its ideals, worth fighting for, even in the face of an unknown and incomprehensible enemy? "Commander," said Lieutenant Voss, her voice laced with a sense of grim resolve, "if we don't make a move, soon the entire Zorkon station will be engulfed in their wake. The ship. It's pulling the entire station toward it. It's absorbing the energy from the station's reactors, using it as fuel." Kale's mind raced. If the Zorkon station fell into the alien ship's grasp, it would destabilize an entire sector, disrupting trade, communications, and defense networks. The fallout would ripple outward, drawing other factions into the conflict, and soon the galaxy could be thrown into chaos. And yet, the ship's demand remained unyielding. Return the artifact. But what was this artifact? What was its significance? And why did these ancient beings, who had clearly been hiding in the shadows of galactic history, now come to claim it? His gaze shifted to the scattered remnants of Zorkon intelligence, their own ships now moving to intercept the unknown vessel, their desperation palpable. There was no way they could hold their ground, not against something so overwhelmingly powerful. Even the Revenant's formidable arsenal would likely be useless if the mysterious ship truly intended to destroy. Commander, we've lost contact with Zor Khan's command fleet, Voss said, a faint tremor in her voice. Whatever they're doing, it's working. The entire fleet is scattered, and their defenses are compromised. We're the only force left in this sector that can respond. Kyle stood still, eyes locked on the alien ship as it slowly advanced toward the orbital station. He understood now. The artifact wasn't just a relic. It was a symbol, a key to an ancient power, a power that was meant to be found by those with the courage to wield it. And perhaps, just perhaps, the galaxy was not ready for what humanity might unlock. What if the artifact held a force so destructive that even Earth had deemed it too dangerous to be kept in the open? He turned to Voss, his voice low and steady. Prepare the ship. We're going to make a stand. We're not giving them the artifact, not without a fight. There was no turning back now. They had come this far, and Kyle wasn't about to let humanity's legacy be erased by some ancient, shadowy force. The Revenant, its crew, its purpose, it was all tied to this moment. The final confrontation had begun. With a nod from Voss, the bridge erupted into motion. The tactical officers began setting up defensive maneuvers, activating the ship's weapon systems, while others worked feverishly to stabilize their shields. Kale could feel the ship's pulse, its lifeblood, synchronized with his own heartbeat, a shared rhythm that reminded him of the human resolve that ran through their veins. Whatever this artifact was, whatever the alien ship sought, Kale knew this was the moment that would define humanity's place in the galaxy. And then, just as the first tremors of combat readiness hummed through the ship, the alien vessel spoke, again. This time, there was no message, no words. Instead, a pulse of energy shot from the unknown ship, illuminating the void between them like a burst of cosmic lightning. It was aimed directly at Zorkon's station, and as the pulse struck, the entire station seemed to fracture, torn apart by the force. In its wake, the station vanished, disintegrated, gone. The Revenant's crew was left in stunned silence, staring at the empty space where the Zorkon station had once been. And Kale knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that humanity's next move would decide everything. The galaxy, as it was known, would never be the same. As the Revenant engaged its engines, Kyle spoke one final time, his voice resolute. We fight for the future of humanity, no matter what it takes.